Watch this space. 15 days is a long time in Pakistan politics. Anything could happen. And I mean, thanks to America's brutal sanctions, there is no money. Greetings, everyone. Today's podcast comes to you from the capital of free Afghanistan. When I arrived the other night, I heard a loud noise thundering over the Pakistan border. It was Imran Khan's supporters after the Prime Minister survived one of the most treacherous, backstabbing moves by his critics. Despite all their maneuverings to oust the charismatic leader, Imran Khan outwitted them and lives to fight another day. He will continue as PM until the appointment of a caretaker under Article 224A in brackets 4 of the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. He was denotified as PM earlier on Sunday after the dissolution of the National Assembly. But, and I warn you, I have read the Constitution, under Article 224, Khan will continue as the Prime Minister for the next 15 days until the appointment of the caretaker. Of course, that's a bit tricky because exactly how do you appoint a caretaker since the National Assembly has been dissolved? Watch this space. 15 days is a long time in Pakistan politics. Anything could happen. Midweek Crisis has been well ahead of the curve on this situation right from the beginning. I was confident, and so was producer Leezee, that the former world-class cricketer turned politician would pull something out of the bag. Pakistan people are passionate about their politics, and the landscape can indeed become volatile. But voters are beginning to sense something is rotten. And that is the outside meddling in their affairs, and it just won't be tolerated. Fingers are already pointing in the direction of Washington, but the Biden administration is dismissing accusations. Well, they would, wouldn't they? But sadly, the US is a country which has previous for undermining and attempting to destabilize other administrations. Just ask the neighbors in Afghanistan, which brings me on to my next subject, the Taliban. I mentioned them on Facebook that I was visiting Kabul and was seeking to sit down with the leadership here to talk about women's rights and girls' education. It was a matter-of-fact statement, but Facebook put me on the naughty step for 3 days. And I have appealed, but the decision could take a few weeks to resolve. Well, since Midweek Crisis is not banned, I can tell you that I have spoken to some key ministers and they listened. The signs are encouraging and change is on the way, but not quickly enough, in my humble opinion. However, I can tell you that some of the biggest critics are the Taliban themselves. They know progress is slow, but then again, it's almost impossible trying to run a country without cash. And I mean, thanks to America's brutal sanctions, there is no money. Cash machines are empty, bank accounts are closed, and those lucky enough to have any savings can't get their hands on them because they've been frozen or disappeared. The situation is so dire that when I arrived in Kabul, a press conference was being held by some of the families of the 9/11 victims. Yes, these brave souls have condemned their own president, Joe Biden, and his decision to give $3.5 billion to cover the legal costs of the 9/11 lawsuits. This is nothing more than a continuation of American colonial venture in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's foreign currency reserves, which this money is part of, have been frozen by the US administration since August 2021, when the Taliban took over Kabul. Remember that? After defeating, and it was a defeat, by the Taliban, They brought an end to 20 years of American-led wars. There is now a humanitarian crisis unfolding in Afghanistan because of US actions, not because of the Taliban. Sadly, the mainstream media often forgets to mention this, which is why we've got the ridiculous situation of lame brains in Facebook censorship department banning anyone who mentions the Taliban in the slightest favorable terms. We will not be censored at Midweek Crisis, nor will we be silent, whether it's on women's rights, the rights to be educated, or the hypocrisy of the West. I'm staying in Afghanistan for a while, so you can expect more dispatches from yours truly about what is really happening on the ground, especially in the rural areas of the country. Don't forget, the Taliban could never have taken power so easily, and it was easy in the final days, if it wasn't for the groundswell of support for them from the rural areas, which make up 70% of the Afghan population. So these are the people I want to speak to, and not those elements of the Kabul elite who are missing their gravy train and still in denial that the Taliban are the people's choice. Actually, there's not many of them left in Kabul now. Most of them have fled. Government ministers with their pockets stuffed with cash from the previous administration. It seems as though everybody's been stealing from the Afghan people, and it's time it stopped. And it's no use targeting the Taliban for hate. You know, you might not like them in New York or Washington or Paris or Bonn or Melbourne, Sydney, London, but that's not your choice. The Taliban are Afghans, they live in Afghanistan, and they have the support of the majority of the Afghan people. And that is the reality. And there are people out there from the Oval Office right through to Downing Street and everywhere else. You know, you're just going to have to deal with it. And think of the Afghan people. Put the people first before your own petty politics. Signing out.